record this? Okay, great. Everyone okay with recording? If not, maybe take your video off. Fabulous. All right, so I guess first of all, I want to say, even though I called this a webinar, it is certainly not a traditional webinar with me just kind of teaching a class. While I've done a lot of deep work on this, and I think Michelle has too. Certainly I have, we have stuff to share, but it's very interactive and every business is going to have a different situation. So especially if we're super small, we can kind of take each person's situation and give some guidance about what programs may work, may not work. What do we know? What's still confusing? I think the only kind of big picture thought that I have as a ground rule is probably, at least my desire would be no politics. Oh, good, somebody else is joining us. So my ground rule would be no politics. It's all chaotic, it's all dysfunctional. So, if we could just maybe, when we're talking about Washington, D.C., refer to them as the government or D.C. and not get into specific who we think is doing what. For the people that are on this call, I don't know if iPhone Richard is Richard Bruno or not, but if it is, then everybody on this call knows that I'm not a financial advisor. This is certainly not my day job. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a small business, just like everybody else. And I have employees and expenses and no income. Some people are going to have down 20%, some people 50, some 100, everybody's. But I am absolutely not an expert. I just have done a fair amount of research in this in order to help some small business clients of mine and myself. And with that, if we had more people, I was actually going to start with some deep breathing, because I think probably there's a lot of anxiety going on for small businesses today for sure. But since it's just our little group, anybody else have any ground rules that they want to throw out there, or does that seem kind of reasonable?
Sounds good.
Okay, Gabs, we can't hear you, sugar muffin.
You got your mute on. There you
go. Okay, so Gavin, I would guess you're kind of fairly in the dark about even what your options are. Okay, I'm going to try to unmute you because I'm going to take control and unmute you. Oh no, I can't even, so it might have a little connection. Can't even. All right, you work on your audio.
Oh, well.
Oh, there you go. So Gavin, I would expect you, because you've been down with your back and everything, that there's my dog.
Yeah.
That you're kind of starting a little bit at ground zero of
yes.
What the heck the options are. Jeff, where would you say you are? Have you already done some research? Are you?
Yeah, I'm the guy who is responsible for our company and what options are there for us. So I'm happy to, I want to hear what you've discovered, and I've got a basis, I'm maybe I'm halfway there on all the options. I've done a few things, and so I have a general understanding. But I feel like this is, things are changing quickly, and it's, today there's a little more information. So I have feelers out, amongst, my people that I work with every day or, often, and I'm just getting information. So, it's kind of feeling like, collaborative effort of what the deal is. And
for sure. Perfect.
What to do.
Perfect. Right. And of course they're going to be, because the gardener's here, right? The gardener just let me just shut some doors. I'll be back. Come here, guys. Come in. Come on in. Don't come in here. So you can't see anybody. Come on in. Come on in. Thank you. Can't see them. Okay, sorry about that. So there are a lot of programs. I guess, Gavin, don't get overwhelmed, because I think we should go kind of quickly through all of the programs, and then we can dive deeper into each one. The big dog in the room is the one that just started today, the Payroll Protection Act. And that covers payroll and all the aspects of payroll. So commissions, salary, wages, tips, your payroll taxes, health benefits, retirement payments, health insurance, like everything, Jeff, that you, how many employees, Jeff, do you have?
We have 19 employees.
19 employees. Gavin's he's a general contractor. It's himself, and it's just him, and then he subs out to other contractors. But so two different situations. I have a couple of small employees. Michelle, are you running a business yet? She's in a career transition.
It's just me. Great time to be starting a business.
Perfect, just her. She's brilliant. I would invest in any business she was in. Okay, so 19 employees, you've got big payroll, and the big picture of the Payroll Protection Act is it's supposed to cover 60 days worth of your payroll expense, as well as rent and utilities. And that can be applied for through a bank. I actually was successfully able to apply today. Whoop, whoop. A lot of banks are not up yet. The amount is supposed to be entirely forgiven as long as you spend, so you're supposed to take your monthly payroll, and they've talked about payroll documentation. It wasn't clear until today what they meant by that, but now we have very clear lists of what that is, which we can go over. But they say, look back at 2019. What was your average monthly payroll? Deduct any amount for any individual employee that made over $100,000. So if somebody makes 150, Jeff, in your company, you're going to count them at 100, and include salary, benefits, payroll taxes, that whole thing. Divide that by 12, get to your monthly amount, and you can apply for 2.5 times that. And that it's entirely supposedly forgiven as long as in X amount of time down the line, they will say, okay, prove to us how much you spent on payroll, how much you spent on rent or mortgage interest for the business, not for our own personal homes, and how much was utilities. And as long as the payroll portion is 75% of the total amount you took out, it's supposed to all be forgiven. Now, in your case, Jeff, since you guys don't have corporate offices anymore, people are going to have to make 2 calls. So either, like for me, my office rent and utilities are not 25%. It's never going to be that. So I backed off of my payroll so that I knew I could make the calculation to be at 75% went to payroll down the line. Other people might choose to go ahead and just take their monthly payroll times 2.5% and be ready, willing, and able to pay interest on whatever portion they think doesn't meet that 75% criteria. So that it's all technically a loan, but the 75%, and if you meet the that 75% went to payroll, then that's forgiven. The interest rate on whatever they consider a loan is now 1%. It was supposed to be 0.5. It's been 0.5 published on treasury.gov all week, but last night it changed. Now, what is not clear entirely is if you meet that, you take out, just to be simple math, you take out $100,000 and 80,000 went to payroll, but you don't have 20,000 of rent and utilities. It's not clear whether they're going to go, well, you met the 75% threshold, so all of it's forgiven, or we're going to take that 80,000 you paid in payroll, and then you only had 5,000 in rent and utilities, and so we're going to charge the rest on a loan. I'm assuming we all have to plan that they're going to do that. But a lot of the documentation makes it sound like maybe they're just going to go, you made the 75, so whatever on the rest. But let's plan for anything that's of that 25% that's not rent and utilities, that would be a loan. Hence, for me, I backed off on my payroll because I was trying to avoid any loan. For Jeff, that doesn't, it seems like he's nodding his head that that's making sense.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, do you have anything to add that I missed as it relates to the payroll protection? And
Let me jump in on this because my information is a little different. Can you hear me?
And we'll get back to that in a second. So let's go back to where we were talking about PPC. And Michelle, you just said that you have a little bit different information. So let's share that.
Cool. So I will send a link out to this Bible that I've been looking at, which is from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I'll send that around for everybody. And the way that they're describing the program is what you can ask for has nothing to do with rent and utilities. What you can ask for is 2.5 months worth of payroll. And like Leah said, it's salary, it's tips, it's commission, it's health insurance for your staff, it's state and local taxes. So that is the ask part for the 2.5 months. At the end of the period, when July rolls around, then you tally up what you actually spent, what pay you gave out to people, what tips you gave out to people, what bonuses you gave out to people. And if you're less than 100%, then you can take a dip into the pool of what did you pay in rent, what did you pay in mortgage, what did you pay in utilities. So to roll with Leah's example from before, if the ask was $100,000, then you get your $100,000, that's the 2.5 months. Then if you get to July, and for whatever reason people quit, you cut salaries, you laid off staff, and now you spent $80,000 in payroll, then you can take a look at, okay, can I scrape together 20 grand in mortgage, rent, and utilities? And if the answer is no, maybe you spent 5, maybe you spent 10. Then, like Leah was saying, that delta becomes the 1% loan. So what I've been thinking about and guiding people on is you start only thinking about payroll and all the nooks and crannies of commissions and tips and local taxes. And right now the focus should be on just the payroll and putting together a 2.5 month story on that. Mortgage can come later, rent can come later.
Right, I think that's good guidance. And I think the two things, it's just a slightly different way of looking at it, but I think actually it's saying kind of the same thing, that anything that's not of that 25% that you could never count isn't going to be mortgage and utilities, is going to be a loan. There's a couple of references that maybe they're going to forgive it, but we need to plan that they're not.
Yeah.
Has anybody taken out, because one thing that I find really confusing in what they just published last night, has anybody taken out the $10,000 SBA advance money? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I applied. I did that. There's a quick application where you apply for that, and they say they're going to deposit that within 4 to 7 days. It's been, I think we're on our 4th day. I just asked for it. It's part of the application. So, but I'll be surprised if it comes that quick. And then it feels like that's just the first step of the bigger potential loan of, okay, now, there's a next part of that. So I just kind of got that ball rolling because I knew that there'd be a big long line. And then I've just submitted the PPP.
Got it. Oh, you were able to submit the PPP.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Michelle, do you feel like you have real clarity on the $10,000 versus a larger EIDL loan? Do you feel like you have super clarity on this?
That part I don't. On the $10,000 grant piece, you mean?
Yeah. And and whether or not it gets their new document this morning or late last night. I read it two ways. There's one reference, and if anybody doesn't have these documents that is going PPP route, I can send you the links. But there's a reference in the new documents that very clearly says, in terms of how to do your calculations, if you got the $10,000 advance, it does not have to be repaid and it doesn't have to be part of your calculation, which is always what it has appeared to be. On page 9, it says that. What I find confusing is what they talk about on page 15 and 16. There, they're talking about if, of course, that advance was never to be used for payroll. They will consider that to be double dipping, right? Because this is all about keeping employees, keep employees in terms of the PPP. So there's a reference on page 15 and 16 that makes it sound like potentially they want us to take that $10,000 off of our PPP. And I read it 5 times today, and I'm like, you guys are still like circling the drain on that. So I think we have time because anybody who's applied for it in the last couple of days hasn't gotten their $10,000, right? And it's not like the money's just going to drop in. There'll be an opportunity, I'm sure, to say, whoa, I don't want that. So I think we just need to reread this, and there may be more clarity coming tomorrow. But I don't think anyone wants to get surprised that they owe money that they weren't planning on owing.
Agreed.
Just some speculation on that. And this is total speculation, but since the PPP is over here and that's direct to the banks, and over here is the EIDL and that's direct to SBA, and that's where the $10,000 comes in. One way that I'm helping people sort through this mess is you take it one step at a time. And today's challenge, like you said, I love this phrase, the big dog in the room is the PPP. I would ignore this $10,000 thing over here for this other loan program, and I would get the ducks in the row for the PPP, get ready for the banks. And if it turns out there was $10,000 extra taken, then it becomes a loan. There's no loan prepayment penalty. You can pay it back and move on with life. I would not, if it were my brain and my company sorting through this, I would not try and commingle the two programs so much right now.
Okay, cool. Well, I just wanted to at least mention that there's some confusion on it. And so, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so Jeff, are you up on what is considered payroll documentation? Because that was not defined until last night. Do you feel like you're clear on that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, cool. The other, Richard, and I'm not sure, oh, that last one is you, Michelle, your phone number. Do you have, okay, Jeff, do you have any questions on PPP that you already are ringing through your head that we can maybe see if Michelle or I know the answer to?
No, I think I'm right with you guys.
Okay. Richard, I can tell by what's showing up there that that's you. If you're just gonna listen because you're muted, that's fine. But if you've got any questions or this applies to you, let us know. Or raise your hand and okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat from him, so I'm going to assume he's just listening in the background. Just in case we have other people, the banks not all banks are up and running. Jeff, what bank are you guys?
We use Union Bank in California, and honestly, we don't have the strongest relationship. I hadn't heard from my banker in 4 years. So I reached out and I got a standard email and they sent me to a page. I actually reached out, I'm in Boise, Idaho, and I reached out to the bank that we use personally and that we use for my wife's business. And I got to someone right away and they're already connected. So, it is, wherever you have the best relationship, and someone will answer the phone, it matters right now. It definitely matters. So we're proceeding forward, and I'll probably do the PPP through the Idaho Bank for the company.
Good. I'm glad you're not having trouble. There are some people today that are having a lot of trouble. Bank of America seems to be on it. I got an email from them on Monday saying, hey, we're going to participate, but we don't know anything from Washington, D.C. yet. So hang tight. And then today I got an email. There's nothing on their public site. So what I think banks are doing, and I won't be surprised if this continues, is they're expecting to be overwhelmed. So they're going to probably first start with, they're only interested in doing this with people that they already have an existing relationship with. So nothing's on the public site, so it's hard to check and see, is my bank ready and is my bank participating? And the phone hold times are 2 and 3 hours for sure. So if you're just calling the 800 number. I don't have a personal relationship with my bank. I have a lot of financial relationship with my bank, but not a personal relationship. So they then sent out an email today saying, we're live, here's your link. So you kind of, if you're not waiting on the line for 3 hours, you kind of need to, you have to at least have a credit card or a business loan, or, you know, they consider, at least Bank of America said you have to be lending with us, which they consider a credit card to be a loan, and depositing your income with us. Then we're willing to do this. So that's good to know that Union Bank is already up and on it. Bank of America is up and on it. Wells Fargo is not. So for any friends that are with Wells Fargo, they are not yet. I'm thinking banks will maybe over the weekend. Hopefully the Treasury does a few things today to make it less risky for them. There's a couple of risks out there for banks right now to do it, which was not supposed to be the point. They are getting paid, by the way, to process these. They're getting paid 5% to process these things. So I was a little disappointed to see them say that that they wanted the interest rate to go from 0.5 to 1, because it's not like they're paying the interest on this. SBA is going to fund them, and the government is going to. Isn't that true, Michelle? That they're not actually. They're getting paid.
I hadn't heard that about the 5%. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I know that 0.5% becoming a 1% was because the bank said we need to make more money off it. So
Exactly.
It is to say the least that you found out that they're making 5% to facilitate these loans for everybody.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. If you go to, and I can send you the link too, if you go to treasury.gov, you can see the instructions to lenders, and there it lists what they get paid. So, you know what, we're not going to spend any energy on stuff we can't control, but this is just about what are our problems and how do we solve them. So, but they are getting paid. Okay, so beyond paycheck protection and the $10,000, assuming Jeff, you know, and other businesses of your size don't want to go into more debt. Yeah.
Well, yeah, can I go back a second on the banks, the really helpful list of banks, and you gave me some great information I hadn't heard about who's up and running and stuff. We want to just echo and underline the point that seems like the best way to go, kind of like what Jeff was saying, is his wife has an existing relationship with a local bank, and that's the way to go. It does seem, based on what I'm reading in the press and the folks I'm talking to, you gotta start with some version of a relationship, someone you have, either because you're going to be able to get actual help, but also some of the banks are saying we're only going to talk to people with whom we have an existing relationship. And to your point about risk a few minutes ago, we're only going to talk to people that we have verified who they are, verified their credit history with us personally. You mentioned Bank of America, and they were quoted yesterday in the Wall Street Journal saying we're only going to deal with people with whom we have an existing relationship. So I imagine as this sorts out and banks are taking on whatever risk they're going to be taking on, they're really going to stick with, as much as possible, those with whom they have an existing relationship. So just want to underline and underscore that point you made.
I fully agree. And it's going to be very frustrating. I have a client right now that she's in a big pile of doo-doo. And she's got 120 a month run rate. And payroll's due, and, you know, and she's already taken out 120 out of her own savings, and she's like, got another, you know, and her bank isn't doing it yet. And she's afraid that they're going to run out of money. And I do think they're going to run out of money. And then I personally believe that they're going to step up for another 350 billion or whatever the amount is. I don't, you know, in for a dollar, in for, or whatever that's saying, in for a pound, in for a penny, in for a pound, you know, like, I don't see them stopping this. I think they're going to continue, but it's going to be frustrating. And I don't know if the second half of this, now I know, Gavin, this probably all sounded really confusing and complicated.
No, not at all.
Okay, good. So you as an independent contractor, because you're not a corporation, right?
No.
Okay. So as an independent contractor, in theory, this program we've been talking about, you could take what you earned in 2019 and come up with your monthly amount there. And as an independent contractor, your first opportunity to apply for this is next Friday. So corporations, LLCs, et cetera, can do that today if their bank is doing it. But independent contractors, sole proprietors, et cetera, can start as of next Friday.
Perfect, because it'll get me time to get all my ducks in a row.
Yeah. So what smaller companies, I think, have to think about is, and I'm so looking forward to, you know, hearing what Michelle has to say, but my thought is smaller companies need to think about, okay, what was my number last year? And 2.5 times that monthly number last year. How does that number compare with what I might get on unemployment? Because for the first time ever, independent contractors, sole proprietors can apply for unemployment. So that is it's what we know, at least what the government has announced, is that unemployment will be $600 a week additional, so $2,400 a month additional for pandemic rate. How much? It's $600 on top of what kind of depends on your income last year. So there's some ways that we can calculate that and kind of look at how much would you have earned regularly under unemployment, even though regularly you would have never qualified. I would have never qualified for unemployment. But given COVID, independent contractors can. So we need to just calculate what would that be? And if that's more than the 2.5 times, then heck, just apply for unemployment. If it's less, then you have to make a call. At least as of last night, Michelle, I don't know if you've looked recently, but at least as of last night, state of California is still kind of saying, hey, yes, there's going to be more money for COVID, but we don't really have all the rules from Washington, D.C. So I don't know if that's changed yet today. I can take a quick peek.
I looked about an hour ago. Yeah, I'm right there with you. The state, at least the state of California, is saying we understand the CARES Act has more federal money coming. We are experiencing crazy high volumes, have patience, we're figuring it out. They do not have on-point guidance to how it will work, at least in California. For anybody outside of California, kind of like Leah was saying, the way to go is to go to the UI, unemployment insurance, or EDD team in your state and see if they have any on-point guidance as to how they're going to apply the CARES Act $600.
Yeah. Now, my thought has been, first, Gavin, just for you, so like the ranges of what it might be after the $600 gets added. I've seen a variety of ranges, but it could be a total of $800 to $900 a week. Another range I saw was $766 to $1,000 a week. So if, even though we don't know exactly, like if you go, well, even at the high end, 900 times 4 would be $3,600 a month that you'd get under unemployment insurance, call it $4,000. if you know that your income was much more than that on a monthly basis last year, then we might want to take a stronger look at the Payroll Protection Act, you know? But if you're like, oh, you know what, last year I wasn't really working all that much, I was making $2,000 a month, then it
Right.
may make sense to look at that. I've kind of been thinking, and Michelle, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I've kind of been thinking that even though California's website, and I'll get to your, I just saw a chat come in as a question, but I've kind of been thinking that even though California's website says, hey, we understand the CARES Act, we're figuring it out, we'll have those informations soon. I've kind of been thinking that there's no harm in people applying for unemployment in California, and that given the date at which they apply, once they figure out how to apply the CARES Act, that would kind of get added in. What do you think about that, Michelle?
With your point that there's no harm other than just during these overwhelming hard times, I'm biased towards do one thing well, then go on to the next thing, then go on the next thing. And I do fear just human nature. If someone is over here doing PPP and over here doing unemployment, it might get just more confusing to sort through everything. So for me, I would do PPP first, and then once that is at least in a stable position, you know, waiting for the banks to open, that kind of thing, then I would go to UI. Just so, I guess it's a personal preference on sequence. That's the only thing.
Okay. And would you do UI? Let's say somebody just says, no, UI sounds like it's my way to go. Would you do UI today, even though they don't have the pandemic part figured out yet, and assume that they're going to backfill? Or would you wait until the EDD website says, okay, we've really looked at everything from Washington and we're ready to go?
For me, I would wait on the UI, and the reason I would wait is that the idea of the idea of unemployment insurance for 1099 folks or independent contractors is so new that I'm curious as to what they're going to look for in terms of documentation. And I think the documentation piece, especially for those who haven't prepped their 2019 taxes, could be really hard. And so for me, I might wait a pinch on, if my personal finances could allow me to do that, wait a pinch on what kind of the paperwork and the documentation is going to look like for the 1099 independent contractor folks. I feel like that could take time and it could be hard. So for that reason, I might wait as opposed to throwing my hat in the ring for UI, waiting for the interview, and then having some fumbling there as to what you're asking for, how to document it. But that's just me.
That's definitely good advice. Certainly you could spend this time, Gavin, starting to get your, you're going to need documentation for
Right.
either.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Either program. So if stuff's in QuickBooks and it just needs to be updated, or if it's just on pieces of paper and on, maybe we need to create a spreadsheet, or we're going to look at bank statements, and I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to help you.
I just gave it everything I had to my tax guy. So, I'll have to reprint off everything again and re-go through everything to make another copy for me to get this process done, which is good because I'm lying around with my injury. I'm in a lot of pain, so I can just keep plodding on doing that when I feel I can sit up and do something.
Well, maybe also your tax guy can, be
Possibly.
implementing it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's see. Richard in the chat room says, here's the California EDD site that I assume will be updated over time. Okay, thank you so much. He's also saying, I saw something regarding if employees have already been laid off, they have to be, if they're rehired by June 30 might be a factor. Absolutely. So and there's an aspect of this that I think Washington actually thought through reality. So you have until June 30 to restore your full-time employment levels for any changes that you made between February 15th pre-COVID to April 26th. So if you laid people off right away, or if you're doing it this week, the way I'm kind of interpreting that is any changes in your employment between February 15 and April 26, as long as you change those back, bring those people back by June 30th, you're in compliance with the program. What I think is kind of rational about that is they're not saying, in order to apply, you need to extend more cash today and rehire those people. They're kind of giving some time, hopefully, for us to apply for PPP, get the money in, and then be able to rehire people. That's how I interpret kind of the reason behind their dates. But it does say you have until, so it's about, if you let people go between February 15th pre-COVID to April 26th, you have until June 30 to bring them back on. Miss Michelle, any clarity?
Yeah, I was looking through my notes. I'm right there with you. That this is a confusing part, and there was a word in my documentation, and then I actually went and read the act, and the word was the same. It was like wages are, quote, restored, end quote. It was a word like that, and I'm now fumbling through my notes to see if I can find the word. And it wasn't clear to me, including when I went to the actual act and read it, if, like to this example, if someone was their wages were cut or they were laid off on February 15th, and then they come back on, let's say today, they come back on April 3rd, is the business requirement to go retroactively pay them to February 15th? Or is the business requirement to restore them here inside that window you just said and then move forward? It's not clear to me, and maybe
I agree.
You're on that.
Yeah, I agree. It's not clear as to, do you have to back pay them, or is it for the next 60 days? Like this is 2 months of money. Was it 2 months, February 15th to April 15th? Well, that doesn't make sense because we're still shut down. Like in theory, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Or is it
I'm
kind
with
of
you.
April through May, hoping that the business can come back online by June? So I wholly agree with you that it's not clear whether back pay needs to happen. Rationally, the 2 months can't be February 15th to April 15th, but it's not clear. But you do have to restore, you're right, there's that word restore, your full-time employment and salary levels for changes that you made. What I think is pretty clear is they don't have to be working. Like if you're shut down, you can be paying them to be at home. Like it's just about paying them. It's just about keeping money in their account. It's not about them actually working.
I completely agree with you. That's a great point to make. They do not have to be showing up or at your direction or performing services. They have to get the paycheck that they had in calendar 2019, or for new businesses that early 2020. That's the only requirement on the part.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Did that help, Richard? Any other questions? Richard, let's see, did I miss anything from him in the chat room? Okay, so I don't think it's going to apply on this call, but I'll just, in case you have other friends that are in similar situations, we're talking about the most common programs that will be of help. There are endless other programs, whether it's you know, can you delay your property taxes? Can you delay paying your mortgage? Can you delay your credit card payment? So, you know, if we want to get into personal debts, we can always certainly talk about that for a minute. There's also, for bigger businesses, there's somebody sent me yesterday, which I haven't had time to really drill into, that there are some statewide programs to defer commercial loans and some really great stuff. Michelle, I'll send you the link. That I don't think is going to apply to wide swath of people. Facebook is also, Facebook has their grants, $100 million in grants for small businesses. There haven't been any details until last night on that. San Diego is unfortunately not one of their cities, so it's not going to help the people that we will know the most. But if we've got friends in LA or, you know, Seattle or other places, Facebook's got cash grants as well as ad credits. And the list just kind of goes on and on about lots of stuff that's out there, really, for sure. Gavin, would it be helpful to talk about personal debt and credit cards?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that most credit cards are being fairly generous to, as long as we communicate. If we just don't make payments, like old rules are going to apply, you know, penalties and blah, 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 and credit hits. But I'm hearing that if you call and you share, hey, COVID, not working, you know, they don't need to know about your back.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
COVID.
Of course.
Not working. People aren't comfortable having a contractor in their house right now for understandable reasons. And so what are my payment deferral options? I heard from one person that their credit card, they said, if you can pay something, even $10, you know, if the payment was due on the 10th, if you can pay a small amount by $10 by the end of the month, we'll kind of label you COVID and we'll defer interest for 90 days. We won't tack on more interest.
For me, Leah, it's more, it's not a credit card. I have an installment agreement for back taxes. So I don't know what the IRS is doing on deferring that stuff, but
they've been silent. Michelle, right? I haven't heard a thing about.
Imagine that.
Not a word, not a peep about IRS.
Yeah, because I just paid this month, so it was due, and then I thought, oh man, I wonder if I could have kept that $300 in my bank.
You know, it's worth if you so they've been completely silent on the topic, but if you're sitting around and you are not annoyed by their awful music, no, I would actually call them.
Yeah.
Might take 3 hours, but
right.
Even though the IRS is not the same as the Treasury in theory and blah, 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 I mean, they've been completely silent on the topic, not a peep.
Funny.
But they might.
Yeah, that's the only thing I've got. Figure that out, and then my car loan really is the only two.
Okay, well, I'd call your car loan people. See, the thing about the IRS is I don't trust them without something in writing. Like whatever they say on the phone, how many times have we heard stories that, I mean, right now they think I'm not in compliance over how quickly I report, even though I got a letter from them last year that said, okay, you're a month, every year you get a letter, you're a monthly reporter. Great, so I followed that direction. And they lost it in their system. It's not in their system. And every time I send them the letter, they're like, okay, we're going to waive your penalties, but we're doing that to be nice to you. And I'm like, I don't want you racking up like points that you're being nice to me. You freaking told me to do it, you know? So with the IRS, I wouldn't actually just trust calling. Whereas your car loan, if they tell you over the phone, you know, they're usually more consistent. They usually don't renege on such things, but the IRS is kind of schmucky.
And I did hear on the call something about they're automatically deferring car loan payments and stuff like that. I think I heard that. But I was having some pretty gnarly pain right then, and I didn't really focus probably.
And every car loan place is going to be different. So that I would say that's probably a pretty big number, right? Because
oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's worth waiting on hold for.
For sure.
That and getting your payroll documentation, maybe checking with your CPA. Hey, is there,
Yeah.
how can we speed that up?
Right. Awesome.
They might
Thank
have
you.
somebody that can help with that.
Right on.
And if not, let's get the documentation back and I'll help you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just reprint it all off and itemize everything out again like I did.
Oh, okay. You have it. Okay. So you,
I do it through my bank statements, all my materials, all my incomes and outcomes, because it's all itemized. I just use the one card. So I've got everything. Takes a little bit of time doing 12 months, but.
and then you've got your income is just the deposits into your bank account. Okay. Michelle, any guidance on how to do that most efficiently? My queen of efficiency.
I guess I would, I like your point. I hadn't considered it as whatever it is, it's in writing when it comes to the IRS. Since the IRS is doing a big blitz right now on the 2019 taxes, and first they came out and said you don't have to pay, then they said you don't even have to file by April 15th. I imagine if I were Gavin, I would start with that premise. If I got someone on the phone, like, hey, the whole premise right now is people don't have to pay. Well, I'm doing back taxes and I want to get in on that too. But I like your point about the writing on whatever happens. Same with car loans, depending on the lender that you have the car loan with, writing or some documentation. I guess I would focus there real hard.
Right on. Thank you.
Even an email, like that's okay.
Yeah,
If they'll actually email you, that would be fast and that would be okay. You'd agree, right, Michelle? Yeah, something.
Groovy.
Okay.
This is so cool that you guys are doing this. Thank you so much. Really awesome.
We didn't even know that we were both doing this until last night was when you texted me, I think, or yeah.
Great souls think alike.
Yeah. I so admire this lady. Like.
Well, you're sweet. No, this was good. And Leah, thank you for getting us together, and especially since it's all new to everybody. I know that your work to paw through this and figure out rates, figure out who's doing what, piece it together is a great service. So thank you for doing that and putting this together.
And thanks right back to you. And let's share information because obviously people are still going to be calling each of us. And so let's.
Who knows? We might get another one of these face call thingies.
We might. And you and I can do one-on-one whenever we need to, for sure.
That's good, Leah. Thank you.
All right, so I think we've kind of hit the, let's see. I spoke to Chase, who will charge 20 to 50K per month. Oh, who I charge 20 to 50K per month and always pay in full every month since I am now a full-time, full customer. Okay, so they are waiving. Oh, he usually pays it off entirely by month. Now he's paying the minimum and they will waive interest and fees for right now.
Right on.
And their direction to him was, I have to call them after my statements arrive, like the interest and charges may show up. That's what it sounds like. And he'll have to call again and say, please remove that.
Right on.
Of hearing this, and I'm so glad that got shared because that's a good reminder to us all in these crazy times. And it looks like, the banks have the money and that's who we have to go beg to get our loans, right? This is a great example of no. The banks have long-term visions, and if this person who wrote this is normally going through 20 to 50K per month, right? Chase does not want to piss off this customer in these short-term times, and we should all remember that in our brains and our hearts when we're asking for help, right? Asking for an exception, asking for documentation. is whether it's 1 month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, things will be back to normal. And these people with whom we do business will not want to have us really pissed off about how we were treated during these times. That's a good reminder as we go ask for stuff.
It's a great reminder. We are in control, right? They also don't all want us going on social media and going, oh my God, I can't feed my kid and blah, blah, blah credit card, you know, is charging me exorbitant. Like they need the good, they at least need not negative PR. They'd love some good PR. And quite honestly, anybody who supports us, I'm all about thanking, you know, like,
yeah,
right? If you make it easier on us to get through this time, heck yeah. You know, and I think we should look for ways to do that as it, you know, make sure the proof is in, you know, you said you're going to do something. If you actually do it, then I'm happy to go on Yelp and Facebook and wherever and tell everybody that you're great.
right.
Said another way then, setting aside that it might take a long damn time to wait on the phone or crashes on websites and stuff, we should not be shy about asking, none of us on this call should be shy about asking for relief, for deferments, for minimums to be lowered, right? We shouldn't hesitate to ask.
Right.
Even if there's not a rule, even if there's not a web form, right? Asking is appropriate right now.
100%.
For exactly.
Nice point, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also need to look to cut our expenses wherever we can. Right. I mean, that's about what we've been talking about, and I totally agree, is about cutting payments. But, you know, let's look when you're looking, Gavin, through your bank statements, if you're like, oh man, I totally forgot that I signed up for that subscriction or something, and I'm not using it at all.
Yeah.
Right. It's a really good time while you're sitting on the couch to kind of go, because there's all these little $10 charges coming out of.
Right?
Yeah.
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 For sure.
Now, I don't want to take
Great
something
point,
out of that business owner, but quite honestly, if I'm not using the service, like, you know, it's just a good time to make sure that our money is going to where we need it to go, because there's not enough of it coming around.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, guys.
I gotta get moving here. I gotta
Yeah.
get out of this position. All right, so good to see you, Leah and Michelle.
Are you
thanks
talking
for
to
sharing
Sheila,
that information.
by the way? Are you talking to Sheila?
I thought about her yesterday.
Okay.
I thought about Sheila yesterday, believe it or not. And yeah, I probably will reach out. Doc, give me some, you know, Cobra stretches to do, but ultimately I got the injection a couple of days ago, and he said just hardly do anything for a couple of days, really let the steroids set in. But because he put a lot more fluid in there's a lot more pressure on those nerves right now till it starts receding the disc. So yeah, it just stabs me like whenever sitting still, you know, it's kind of gnarly. So there's not much I can do right now other than just complete rest and lay in. And yeah, it's pretty brutal right now. But it'll
Does
go
ice
away.
help? Does ice help?
I've got the Ice Asia brings it in for me, and then I'm doing ice and heat to just kind of open it, close it.
Okay. Well, she's not seeing patients in person because she would feel terrible ever getting anybody, but she is open to doing telehealth, you know, video and yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Gavin, I'm really sorry to hear that you've got physical stuff alongside all this economic stuff. The complete collapse of the country and a free will movement. So, my best to you. I'm really sorry to hear that, and I wish you well.
Thank you. Oh, it worked out. It always does.
Good.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
Guys, I love you and leave you. It's been great seeing you.
Great seeing you too.
Chat soon.
All right.
All right.
Be well, everybody. More information as we get it.
Beautiful.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, all.